Welcome to the Beyond Electric Sheet podcast. I'm Brick Thompson.
And I'm Ed Daniels.
Hey, Ed. So today we wanted to start by talking about something that Reid Hoffman, CEO of LinkedIn, brought up recently in an article or in an interview, talking about sort of the bottom rung of the ladder of employment and that it may be going away. In other words, AI can do some of these entry-level jobs really well now. So you don't need to hire an entry-level person just out of college or high school to do that job. So great, companies can save money that way, maybe get better outcomes because the AIs are so good at it. But it raises a problem then when you have guys like you and me who may stop working at some point. How do you backfill if you never brought in that lower rung, right? You have to. People traditionally have come in at that bottom rung and learned by doing a lot of reps, making mistakes in a low consequence way, getting judgment, and then becoming more and more valuable and moving up the chain. If there's not that first step in, how does it work?
Right. I think we're beginning to see this impact on the workforce. It's hard to say because it's early days and there are other economic factors at work, but it seems like people right out of college, for example, are having more difficulty now finding a job. People just starting in a new profession or trade are having a little bit more of a difficult time finding a job. So we may be beginning to see this impact. And what you're asking is, what do we do about it? How do you have seasoned employees to move into higher level management positions if you don't have those early job experiences?
Yeah. So that's true. Employment's really tough for recent grads right now. That could be an economic cycle thing.
Yep.
There was a lot of hiring just post-COVID. There were some layoffs in the last 18 months, 24 months. That may cycle through.
Right.
One of the fallacies of human thinking is that how it is now is how it's always going to be.
Right.
So that may not be the case. But I have a feeling that AI is having some impact. Certainly people are thinking about it. And so I think it's reasonable to assume that it will displace some of those. So, for example, in a law firm, an AI like Claude, Anthropic's LLM, can do a great job of analyzing a contract. It doesn't even have to be a simple contract. And saying, here's the parts I would look at, here's the things that are favorable for us, here are the things that are favorable for them, here's how we might resolve them. Where you might have had a paralegal or a junior attorney working on that, now you can get a lot of that work done just with the LLM. And then if you give it to a junior person to correct or maybe look at the issues that are raised by the LLM, do they have enough experience now to work on it?
Right.
How do you get people that experience then?
Right. And, you're sort of left with maybe bring them in at the next level, but that's not good enough. So maybe you just have to simulate the job and have people come in and run simulations and begin to learn things. But, as we know from a lot of different experiences, simulations just aren't quite the same. You sort of need the pressure cooker of reality to be able to really get the experience, to make mistakes, to trip up. Can you imagine appearing in front of a judge for the first time and, starting a case and not having ever had that experience before?
Yeah, no, you're right. So maybe what the case is that you still have things that are low consequence if it goes badly, that you allow people to get those reps on and make those mistakes and learn. I also think there may be a case for you attach a junior person to a more senior person more closely than you do now, more of an apprenticeship. Right. Whereas now you might have a junior person, that first rung on the ladder. Yes, they have a boss, they have assignments, their work gets checked, but it's really low consequence, so there's not a ton of interaction. And maybe you just start attaching people to more senior people.
Yeah, and the problem is, of course, you're running a company, you're always under economic pressure. Do you really need this sort of fifth wheel extra person following along behind you and, trying to absorb some things? I think it would have to be a little more of an organized process, and the purpose would have to be designed to get that person experience and really get them to be in a position where they could move into a higher level management job.
Yeah. As you were saying that, it made me think too, companies, commercial enterprises are going to think in terms of, I don't need to hire that person now, so I'm not going to do it this year. I'm going to have a better profit this year. I'll deal with that later. And that may not be irrational, because who knows how much better the AIs are going to get, and where do you want to hire the people in? It goes back to things we were talking about months ago around UBI and so on. How do we deal with this?
Because overall net, you've got less people employed, unless the economy or the particular business sector that you're in is expanding so much that there's a lot more opportunities. You just squeezed out the most vulnerable people, but also the people with the big potential that, like you said, you're going to be depending upon to run your company or your department or your division.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder, or people will start migrating to things that are very uniquely human capabilities.
Like?
Anything that's a personal service thing. So the obvious example is a therapeutic masseuse or a dancer or an artist. Although, man, even that in art, there's a whole different question there.
No,
but there may become an economy that values human-produced art or goods, that type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a big question, but it still doesn't exactly answer. If somebody wants to be, or you need lawyers, or you need tech executives, or you need high-level factory people to troubleshoot the production line. Even if it's a lights-out factory, you still have problems occur that you have to work on, or implement new things that AI or robots aren't ready to handle yet. So
I wonder if you end up with just needing less people, because you can leverage each person so much with the AI tools and soon robotics and so on, that you just don't need as many. Although that makes me think of something I heard once, which is, there's almost never not a need for more programmers. The world needs more good code. And we're limited by how much the economy will support in terms of developing new code. So if it gets cheaper to produce new code, you're always producing more, so you're always hiring programmers, so you'll always need the programmers. That may fall apart here shortly. The new programming agents like Codex and those things.
Question that.
I really do,
Right. So now, we're, on the one hand, we're thinking advice for business leaders who need to have somebody to backfill for them when they're ready to move on and retire and that sort of thing. But we also have to give advice to the young people graduating from college or training programs that are looking for opportunities and not finding as many. Those are
What would your advice to those people be?
Well, for the business executives, I think you've got to be thinking about a succession plan. That's something that so many business people don't. Even managers and department heads, right? If you have somebody ready to backfill your job, an apprentice, they're ready to go, that's going to make more mobility for you. So it's always a good idea. So I think just thinking this through and figuring out how you're going to handle that, especially if there's no junior level jobs available anymore, I think that's important. Make a slot in your budget to make that, to be able to hire those kind of people just for the purpose of apprenticeship and moving up.
So you'll do
hierarchy.
So you as a CEO, former CEO of several companies, that makes sense for you, right? I need that new next guy that can lead.
Right.
But what about 4 levels below that? You still need succession there, but maybe the manager there is not quite motivated the same way. He's being hassled about his budget. How do you?
I don't know. We were talking earlier about CEOs giving advice to their teams, and I think we're going to talk more about that in a subsequent podcast. But I think we need to have these even more junior level managers be aware of what's happening, what the issues are going to be, about the need for them to be able to have replacements teed up for their job, for them to become available. They have to understand the dynamics of the workplace, and it's a scary place to be. Honestly, I think we're being very careful to not freak out the younger people in our organizations and the people that are just getting ready to jump into the workforce. But it's going to be a scary place, and people better be prepared for it.
Yeah, I think that's a whole other topic, and we'll probably talk about that as you said in a subsequent episode, yeah, people are going to have to get ready for it. I think my advice would be get in where you can and be ready to pivot and change and be flexible and figure out how you can bring some of these tools to bear on the things you've been hired to do. Don't shy away from it. Don't try to pretend it's not there or hope it's not coming. It's coming. You should be the person that's really good at implementing it and managing it. But getting that foot in the door is harder because there's not as many spots, potentially.
So by being aware, by thinking this through from the perspective of the person the next level up or the level beyond that, and then being able to address it rather than just waiting for the inevitable onslaught of AI to take away your opportunities, you have to be able to address that now and probably address it with the person you're interviewing with or your manager and talk about it with them and not be afraid to deal with the situation head on.
I think that's right. You want to show someone who's thinking about hiring you that you're embracing it because they're going to have to, and that you're going to bring value, you're going to get leverage, you're going to be creative, you're able to pivot, you're able to be flexible.
And you might have 5 job opportunities where you're talking to people and 4 of them you bring up this issue and they sort of poo-poo it or don't like the fact that you're being aggressive about it. Those might not be the jobs for you. But the 5th one, somebody might be receptive and might be interested in the fact that you're thinking ahead like this.
Yeah, and it's hard too. So you might say, okay, so instead of studying computer science, study AI in the workplace and become a prompt engineer or something. But even that, we're not going to need that skill. So you need to be more general than that. You need to be good at using these tools and adapting to the changes. This past week when we're recording it, Microsoft just had their Build conference, Google I/O happened, Anthropic released Claude 4. I mean, all the tools that came out of those are kind of mind-blowing, which is hard to imagine because we get our mind blown every few months. It's incredible.
It is incredible, but I think it really means time management. It's an old concept, but what that means is that you got to be parsing out a little bit of your time to try to keep up with all these changes. You're going to have to parse out some of your time to be dealing with the specific job that you have or the opportunity that you're trying to get. And then, you need to be working on those basic skills, whether it's coding or, whatever, law, whatever the discipline is that you're pursuing. So you just have to make sure that you're making the absolute best use of your time. And there's no amount of spare time that can't be applied to an important purpose in this new game of work.
I think that's right. Yeah, and it gets pretty meta pretty quick because you can use Claude 4 to advise you on how best to make yourself valuable this way. And okay, interesting topic. I wish I felt grounded and I knew how that was going to play out, but all we can do is stay flexible, keep our eyes open, keep learning, keep experimenting.
Right, we're all running across quicksand here, and we have to find our footing. So.
Okay. All right, well, look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Rick.
All right, see ya.